Hello, Hellman first graders. It's time for another chapter of Poppy. We are on chapter 15, and where we left off was that Poppy and Erith had just made it to Newhouse, and Poppy sees a big barn off in the distance there, and she notices there's another owl that's not Mr. Okax perched up in this barn. So we get to meet this new owl now and find out how they're going to get the salt lick, and a lot of things going to happen, a lot of action packed in, I think, these last few chapters. Chapter 15, Alone Again. Erith moaned softly. "Isn't that the most luxurious thing in the whole world?" he asked, gazing at the salt lick. Poppy, whose eyes were fixed on the enormous owl, could hardly speak. "It's awful," she barely squeaked. Erith turned to her. "What are you saying?" he demanded. "Look," Poppy cried, trembling as she pointed to the owl in the barn. Erith turned and looked. "Never noticed that before," he grunted. In wonder, Poppy murmured, "Mr. Okax is only half that size." Erith shrugged. That was Gracie's tail. Then went back to gazing at the salt. "Well, girl," he said, "have you figured out how you're going to get that salt for me?" Poppy, still in a state of shock, managed only to shake her head. Erith took one last loving look at the salt and turned. "You know where to find me," he said. "Don't let me down." With that, he began to waddle away. "Erith!" Poppy cried, her fearful trance broken. "Wait!" The porcupine peered around peevishly. "What now?" he grumbled. "You aren't just leaving me here, are you?" "What else am I supposed to do?" "Help me," Poppy said in a small voice. "Poppy, we made a deal. I'd get you here, you'd get me that salt. I've done my part. Now you do yours." "But..." "No buts," Ear snapped, lashing his tail in irritation. Poppy backed away. I'm going home now, but I'll be waiting." With a final glare, he said, "Keep your promise, fur ball," and marched off. Poppy started to run after him, but tripped on something and fell flat. When she got up, Ear had disappeared among the corn. An unhappy Poppy dusted herself off. It was then that she noticed what had tripped her. It was one of Erith's tail quills. When he'd flounced his tail, it had fallen out. Poppy picked up the quill gingerly. She'd never really looked at one closely before. It was mostly black and made of long fused hairs, just as Erith had said. One end was blunt, the other end, the sharp end, was ivory white. With fascination, Poppy examined the tiny barbs. The point which she was unable to resist touching was frightfully sharp. She was about to toss the quill away when she had an idea. Grasping it by its blunt end, she swished it around a few times. It moved nicely, like a sword. So here's Poppy with the porcupine quill. And in the story that we were reading in class, it's the same book, but on the cover of that book, Poppy was holding a porcupine quill, and we weren't quite sure that that's what it was, but now we've confirmed. Poppy found a tall blade of grass, plucked it, and tied it around her waist in a sash-like fashion. With care, she slid the quill under this belt. It fit comfortably. Then she drew the quill out a few times to see if it came free easily. Though a single quill was not the full arsenal that Erith carried, it was something. She only hoped she'd ever have to use it. Reluctantly, Poppy turned her attention back to the enormous owl on the barn. The bird had not moved, but was still sitting on its perch, gazing off into the distance with huge eyes. Poppy was relieved it had not turned her way. So here's her. She made a little blade of grass sash and she stuck the quill in it. Oh, so cool. And ooh, look at this big owl. Oh, ooh, ooh. The realization that at the moment the owl might turn and discover her made Poppy retreat into the corn, but not so far that she'd be unable to peer out. Once hidden, she tried to make sense of her situation. It was all very well to have reached Newhouse, but now that she'd arrived, she had still no real clue to why Mr. Oakhacks would not permit them to move here. All she'd seen was this huge owl. Could this be the reason? Could his reason have something to do with that? Poppy tried to think it through. An owl of this size would be ferocious. Perhaps Mr. Oakhacks was worried that this bird would steal his food. It certainly would eat a lot. The truth was, and Poppy forced herself to acknowledge it, the huge owl made moving here impossible. Mr. Oakhacks was bad enough. This owl looked twice as bad. Then Poppy had a new thought. Was Mr. Oakhacks really trying to protect her family? Had she been wrong about him all along? But then perhaps this owl was not really living here at Newhouse. Simply because she was seeing it now proved nothing. It could be passing through, perhaps just spending the night. The sun was up now. Poppy decided she had best settle in and wait to see what, if anything, happened. That's the end of chapter 15. That was pretty short. Well, I'll be reading another chapter to you next, so stay tuned.